Judging by the timer that just went off, it looks like it's go time. So I'd like to welcome everybody to the April 2nd, 2019 City Council meeting for the City of Hutchinson. Please call the roll.
Deckand?
Here.
Daveline?
Here.
Soldner?
Here.
Pyros de Carvalho?
Here.
Inskeep?
Here.
Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Kim, if you'll indulge us with a prayer this morning. Thank you.
Yes. I invite you to pray with me. God of wonder, your compassions are new every day. We look around and see the evidence of spring with flowers popping through the soil, a sign of new growth that you are working in our world. Help us to be change agents of new growth within our families and community. God, I pray for today's meeting and our leaders. May you guide the discussions as we work together, creating new directions. Give us ears to understand, hearts to care, and hands to work hard. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item.
Item 4, proclamations.
All right. I was forewarned that April is Proclamation Week, or month rather, and they did not lie. There's 4 of them today. So if you'll bear with me, I was telling Steve earlier, at least it's not Red Ribbon Week, which can be a tongue twister.
You won't leave that one alone, huh?
I'm not going to leave that one alone, not just yet. Very good, if you'll indulge me. Whereas, in 1982, the President's Task Force on Victims envisioned a national commitment to a more equitable and supportive response to victims, and whereas, this commemorative week celebrates the energy, perseverance, and commitment that launched the victims' rights movement, inspired its progress, and continues to advance the cause of justice for crime victims, as crime can leave a lasting impact on any person, regardless of age, national origin, race, creed, religion, gender, immigrations, or economic status. And whereas incorporating communities' existing experts and trusted sources of support into efforts to fully serve survivors will develop a criminal justice system response that is truly accessible and appropriate for all victims of crime. And with the unwavering support of their communities and victim service providers behind them, survivors will be empowered to face their grief, loss, fear, anger, and hope without fear of judgment, and will feel understood, heard, and respected. And whereas serving victims and rebuilding their trust restores hope to victims and survivors, as well as supports thriving communities. And whereas engaging a broader array of healthcare providers, community leaders, faith organizations, educators, and businesses can provide new links between victims and services that improve their safety, healing, and access to justice. And honoring the rights of victims, including the rights to be heard and to be treated with fairness, dignity, and respect, and working to meet their needs rebuilds their trust in the criminal justice and social service systems. And whereas National Crime Victims' Rights Week, April 7th through 13th, 2019, provides an opportunity to recommit, ensuring that all victims of crime, especially those who are challenging to reach or serve, are afforded culturally and linguistically accessible and appropriate services in the aftermath of crime. And the Reno County District Attorney's Office is hereby dedicated to strengthening victims and survivors in the aftermath of crime, building resilience in our communities and our victim responders, and working for a better future for all victims and survivors. Now, therefore, I, David A. Inskeep, Mayor of the City of Hutchinson, Kansas, do hereby proclaim this week of April 7th through 13th, 2019 as Reno County Crime Victims' Rights Week, and reaffirm the City of Hutchinson's commitment to creating a victim service and criminal justice response that assists all victims of crime during Crime Victim Rights Week and throughout the year, and to express our sincere gratitude and appreciation for those community members, victim service providers, and criminal justice professionals who are committed to improve our response to all victims of crime so that they may find relevant assistance, support, justice, and peace. So that is Reno County Victim Rights Week. All right. Next, if I could ask Michael Woods if you'll join me here at the podium, please. Whereas the Reno County Early Childhood Council and other local organizations, in conjunction with the National Association for the Education of Young Children, are celebrating Week of the Young Child, April 14th through 18th, 2019, with many activities to celebrate this event. And whereas, by calling attention to the need for high-quality early childhood services for all children and families within our communities, these groups hope to improve the quality and availability of such services. And whereas, the future of our community depends on quality of the early childhood experiences provided to young children today, and whereas high-quality early childhood services represent a worthy commitment to our children's future. Now, therefore, I, David A. Inskeep, Mayor of the City of Hutchinson, Kansas, do hereby proclaim April 14th through 18th, 2019 as the Week of the Young Child, and urge all citizens to recognize and support the needs of the young children in our community. And if you'd like to say a few words.
Thank you. Good morning. Again, it's time to connect, engage, and celebrate the Week of the Young Child, which, as the proclamation said, it's from the April 14th through the 18th. I have passed out a flyer to you all. It shows the different programs. We're starting Sunday at the zoo, and we'll go through every day until through Thursday. And we will end on Thursday, on third Thursday, down at here at the city. The third Thursday activities, there's 5 or 6 different types of activities, program tables for different programming for early childhood. It's just a good time for young families or families and young children to celebrate the different activities. All these activities are free and open to anyone, basically from with children 0 to 8 years of age. On the back, it lists some different programs, and I will read some of them because this is, if you know somebody else that would like a flyer, you can get it from there. That would be the Early Education Center, Reno County Infant Toddler Program, Parents as Teachers, Reno County Head Start, which is ages 3 to 5, Early Head Start, which is birth to 3, and Healthy Families, which is also birth to 3. And I will leave these with you. Reno County Early Childhood Council in its member programs would like to thank the city and the council for its continuing support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I did get a chance to browse the flyer, and it's a wealth of opportunities for, like I said, all different ages. It's a great thing.
Yes. Very good.
All right, let's see, here we go. Whereas children are key to the state's future success, prosperity, and quality of life, and while children are our most valuable resource, they are also our most vulnerable. And whereas children have a right to be safe and to be provided an opportunity to thrive, learn, and grow. And whereas child abuse and neglect can be prevented by supporting and strengthening Kansas families, thus preventing the far-reaching effects of maltreatment, providing the opportunity for children to develop healthy, trusting family bonds, and consequently, building the foundations of communities. And whereas we must come together as partners so that the voices of our children are heard by all, and we are as a community extending a helping hand to children and families in need. And whereas by providing a safe and nurturing environment for our children, free of violence, abuse, and neglect, we can ensure that Kansas children will grow to their full potential as the next generation of leaders, helping to secure the future of this state and nation. Now, therefore, I, David A. Inskeep, Mayor of the City of Hutchinson, do hereby proclaim the month of April 2019 as Child Abuse Prevention Month. Thank you. For a couple words, please. Thank you.
April is Child Abuse Prevention Month. It is time to celebrate the good things our community does to promote healthy child development and help prevent child abuse and neglect.
We all have a role to play in healthy child development, and our goal this April is to help others recognize this role and the ways in which we can maximize our impact. Everyone wants to provide and nurture their child in a positive, healthy environment, but sometimes parents need a little support along the way. Programs and strategies like home visiting and parent education all play a role in strengthening families, and the Kansas Children's Service League and Healthy Families of Reno County appreciate the recognition and support from the City of Hutchinson. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And a skip or all the above that want to join from the Boys and Girls Club? Whereas the young people of Hutchinson are tomorrow's leaders, and whereas many young people need professional youth services to help them achieve their full potential, and whereas there is one Boys and Girls Club organization in Hutchinson, including 3 sites that serve nearly 1,000 young people annually, and whereas Boys and Girls Clubs instill young people with self-confidence to believe they can succeed at anything they put their mind to, and stand at the forefront of efforts in areas of academic success, healthy lifestyles, and good character and citizenship. And whereas Boys and Girls Club organizations in Kansas help ensure young people have a safe, supportive place to spend time and will provide them with quality youth development programs. And whereas the Boys and Girls Clubs of Hutchinson will celebrate National Boys and Girls Club Week with some 4,000 clubs and over 2 million more children and teens nationwide. Now, therefore, I, David A. Inskeep, Mayor of the City of Hutchinson, Kansas, do hereby proclaim April 8th through 12th, 2019 as Boys and Girls Club Week, and encourage all citizens to join me in recognizing and commending Boys and Girls Clubs in Kansas for providing the young people of our communities with comprehensive and effective youth development services.
Just very quickly, I'll turn it over to the superstar here in a minute, the real star of our program. A quick thank you to the City of Hutchinson for 30 years of your support and for the use of Shattuck Park Community Center. I think a lot of people, if you know the story, this is where we're at, and it's a facility that's that sees about, like I said, 800 to 1,000 young people every year that come through that community center. So a special thanks from me as the director all those years for your guys' support and what you've done for us and continue to do for us. If I make a phone call to John and there's something that I need, he doesn't hesitate to help us because he understands the importance of having a safe place for those young people to go every day. And speaking of those young people, that he used to be this tall, I'm going to turn over to Mr. Caleb here. He'd like to just say a few words about what the club means to him and what it's meant to him through his years with us.
Hi.
Good morning.
The club to me means a lot. Growing up, it was always a safe place for me and always will be. I think through the continued support through the city, well, it'll be a safe place for younger generations. I decided to give back to my club as I am president of the Keystone Club. So I just always like to see that place thrive because it's always meant a lot to me. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thanks. Thanks, Dave. Have a great day. Thanks.
Thank you.
No tongue twisters. I loved it. Very good. Next item, if you would, please.
Item 5, oral communications from the audience.
This is the portion of the meeting where those in the audience that want to make commentary on anything that is not on the agenda, please limit your remarks to 5 minutes, and please give your name and address, if you would, please.
I'll go first today.
John's stepping up. Very good.
Who are you? John Deerdoff, City Manager, 3407 Arrowhead Drive.
Nice, very nice. Well done.
It's my pleasure to introduce to the council and actually to the community our new Human Relations Officer, DeJada Moore. She started work yesterday and really excited to introduce her to the community and introduce her to the Human Relations Commission and start the good work that group does. So just wanted to introduce her today. She might want to say a couple words, but welcome to Jada.
Good morning and welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you all for having me. I'm excited to be here, excited to start this work that has already begun in some respects, and hopefully to be a really great asset to the city of Hutchinson. So thank you for having me, and look forward to meeting all of you and working with you.
Wonderful.
Very good.
Thank
Welcome.
you so much.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Pleased to have you.
Chief, please.
Jeff Hooper, Chief of Police. Come here today to talk to you about a great opportunity for the city of Hutchinson. I think it's a fantastic that has been placed in front of us. I want to back up and kind of give you a little bit of history. After 9/11, one of the things that we realized, one of the lessons learned out of that was that in emergency services, we had a problem with communication. We had a problem with talking to each other. All the cell towers went down, and that really inhibits our ability to be able to provide services to our community. So one thing the federal government did was they put forth a project that mandated that emergency services get a special bandwidth. It's actually called Band 14 to utilize specifically for us in those emergency situations. AT&T got the contract from the federal government to build out that band nationwide, and they have a mandate that they have to provide coverage to 99% of the United States on that bandwidth. They've rolled that into their FirstNet package and their Smart Cities package that they're trying to roll out across the country. So what is FirstNet and what is that Smart Cities package that they're talking about? Well, it's a variety of things. It's almost a smorgasbord of anything you could basically dream up they're wanting to do for communities and for emergency services. So some of the things they're specifically looking at are proximity-based dispatching in conjunction with smart technology. So I'll give you an example. You're at your house one night, you look out your window and somebody's breaking into your car. You call 911, the dispatcher on the other end says, hey, just turn the camera on your phone and point it outside at what's going on. We then would get a live feed of that crime in progress that would come into the communications center, be pushed out to an officer on the street, and before dispatch could even get on the radio and dispatch that officer, because it would pick up his proximity, it would show that officer pop up on the screen in his car, that crime in progress. Dispatcher wouldn't have to give you a description of the suspect because you can see what's going on en route to the call. Different things like that they're really looking into. So now they've even taken that and they've rolled that into their smart cities concept, whereby let's say we wanted to put in what we would call a smart intersection. So a smart intersection could be a variety of different things. It will be a sensor on that intersection that I know that myself and Chief Beer are interested in. So if we're responding, take 11th and K61 for an example, and we're responding to an emergency call that has to go through that intersection, when we have our emergency lights and siren on, it would trip the lights at that intersection to allow us to move through that intersection more safely. It also would have sensors on that intersection whereby we could see the traffic flow, we could see the traffic pattern. It would automatically sense if there was congestion at that intersection, be a stalled vehicle or an accident or something like that. That could then even be rolled into cameras at that intersection that could pop into the street department or into dispatch or into a unit, the fire department's unit or one of our units, so we could see the congestion at that intersection. It would automatically pop up red and feed us that information even before anybody even called in on 911. So, some other things it can do for the city on a smart intersection, it would give us vehicle traffic counts and that type of data. They're even looking at things, for example, for cities to have for an automatic deployable drone. So when we had our flooding last year or our fire of a couple years ago, and we had mandatory evacuations and fire couldn't get into those scenes to see if people were evacuating, we could deploy that drone and they would be able to, it would give us instant feedback, video feedback of that scene, so we knew whether people were in danger or people were evacuating without putting emergency services and lives in danger. Those are just some of the things that they're looking to kind of roll out with this smart cities concept. So why do I tell you all this? Well, AT&T has approached us, and out of all the cities in the nation, they want Hutchinson to be the beta test city for their Smart Cities project. They were here last week. Mr. Deardoff and I and all the department heads from the city met with them. It actually was a bigger deal than we thought. They were supposed to come and give us a proposal and say, hey, are you interested in doing this? And they want us so bad that they were assuming that we would jump on board, and they had a professional video crew here that did video clips of us. They are doing a complete promo of the city of Hutchinson after they were done with us. They spent all afternoon with us. After they were done with us, they drove around our city and took video to do a promo video of Hutchinson. If we decide that we want to beta test this product, their project, there's no monetary commitment on our part. They furnish all the upgrades to equipment, all the software. If we decide that we want to test drive a drone, they'll supply the drone, they'll supply all the hardware. When the beta test project is over, if there's any parts of it that we like, that we wanted to keep it, let's say we put in 1 or 2 smart intersections, and we decide that we want to continue that, they will leave all that hardware and stuff for us for free. We would have a service fee for continuing that, but then it would also be a system whereby if we wanted to put in 2 or 3 or 5 more smart intersections, we could build off of that. There will be, while there's no monetary commitment, there would be staff time commitment, and it's going to affect pretty much most of the divisions across the city if we decide that we want to roll this out. But they give us the option to say, this is what we think we want to test drive in our city. This is the beta test that we want to do. So we'd be able to look at those projects and decide what was right for the city of Hutchinson and what we wanted to build out here. So it's just a fantastic opportunity. We would get national recognition. We would be on all their national promos for AT&T as they try to roll out FirstNet. And so it would really be, I think, a really good thing for the city of Hutchinson.
Wonderful.
Very interesting.
I'm intrigued by the investment on their part in the infrastructure at no expense to us. That's exciting. I know there's an ongoing expense if we choose to stick with it or whatever, but I guess one of the questions I had is, how long is the beta test, did they describe?
It's a fairly aggressive timeline. To kind of tell you, they are mandated by the federal government to make this happen. So they are not going to let us fail here. They've even talked about building out the AT&T cell towers in our area for better coverage here, and then that would be built out, and obviously they would leave that. They are looking to have a marketable product to be able to put out across the United States by the first quarter of 2020. So we're talking, we'd have basically 3/4 of the year. They're looking at having us up and going by the middle of the year, about a 6-month test period. And then they're hoping to be able, we would literally probably in the 4th quarter of this year, there would be dignitaries from all over the country coming into our community to see how the project is going, see how it would be applicable to their cities, having us demonstrate what it's done to the city of Hutchinson and our Smart Cities project. So
Very cool.
What's your take on why Hutchinson was selected?
Yeah.
There's a couple things for that. The state of Kansas, believe it or not, we're the leaders in the country in our PSAP communications, dispatch communications, and this all kind of ties into that emergency communications. We have a statewide system whereby 98 of the PSAPs, or 98 of the communication centers in the state of Kansas, are on that statewide system. No other state has been able to pull that off. They're all trying to get a statewide system. They're all trying to get PSAPs on there, but the state has to support that. And our State 911 Council has committed to that across the state of Kansas, and PSAPs have to opt into that. My old agency, they're still trying to pull that off. They're still not on the state system, but we've been in the city of Hutchinson, we've been on that state system for some time. And the test site for that is right here. We control that. It's in Yoder. So we were the beta test city for Next Gen 911. That was a successful beta test site for us. And so they naturally looked at the state of Kansas because we're more advanced than any other state in the nation in reference to building out those PSAPs. We have been a beta test site for other projects, and we've been successful in those. Plus, the way they put it to us is they want an urban environment, but not so big that the project is too big. So Hutchinson is just the right size. It's not too small, but it's also not too large for a project like this. that coupled with our success on former beta projects, they selected us as their #1 choice in the nation. So
Interesting.
So are we the only beta, or are there several or a number of them through?
We're it.
We're it.
Wow.
Really?
we're the only beta that.
Wow.
Yeah, there may be other betas depending on what we decide that we want to roll out here down the road. They may select other. I suspect they'll step up to a larger community.
For other elements,
But we're the
or
first.
or a larger.
We're the first in the nation.
Prestigious. Very nice.
So, you know, we just wanted to bring this before you.
Yeah.
We haven't committed to anything yet. We're supposed to get back to them as soon as possible to let them know whether we want to commit to this project, but we wanted to bring it before the council to see if that's something that the city would be interested in.
Chief,
Oh, please.
I was going to say I'm certainly in favor of smart cities, and I mean this is the direction we're all moving. I work for an innovative technology company, so I'm just putting that out there up front so this doesn't come across as anti this project. There are some concerns I think we need to be aware of on the front side. How will this impact our budget in the future? We will have to use their service if we want to continue any of this because the infrastructure is already there. We're never going to be able to afford that on our own. So do we have any ideas about that? And then also privacy concerns, especially with the drones.
Right.
I want to make sure we're having those conversations before we make our city guinea pigs without being aware
Sure.
of those. So do we have a committee that's kind of working through that, or?
Well, and those are all very legitimate concerns. We anticipate with the city manager that we can select whatever projects we want to roll out in the city of Hutchinson. And so we're looking at having our entire department heads look at those projects and find out what's acceptable to us. Perhaps the drone is not acceptable to us. Maybe that's something we don't want in our community, and we wouldn't have to beta test that, for example. So it's totally up to, we have total control over what we want to beta test and what we feel is right for our community. I, of course, would share those, those privacy concerns when you're talking about a drone, but there are restricted areas where you can fly. We would have to have procedures in place on how we would utilize that, whether we use it for, we use it only for emergency situations, emergency circumstances, or whether we use it to survey the community as well. And so it's entirely what we would want to do that for. Your other concern is valid as well. If we decided to keep any of their functionality for our smart city, we would have to go on the AT&T network. I've talked to Todd and IT, and there are some concerns. There's some concerns with coverage. We're not an AT&T city as far as emergency services, and our staff phones are right now. So the question would be, would we want to roll some of those services into the AT&T network, or would we want to stick with what we've always known and what we've been comfortable with? And those would be choices that we could make down the road. There would be no commitment to us moving over to the AT&T network or any of their services. If we like what we saw in the beta test project and decided that's the way we wanted to go, we can make that decision, and then we would have a financial commitment then. But if we decided, yeah, we love being a beta test city, but it's not for us, we're not going to go that way, we just opt out, and we've spent no dollars.
Okay, great.
So,
And we'd be privy to all the data, all the analytics as we go along to see what bears merit or doesn't. And
we would.
Okay.
We would.
I didn't know sometimes they proprietize that and don't share, but that doesn't sound like this is the case. Okay.
No, they're very open to working with us. In fact, I think they want us a lot more than we even wanted them. They're the fact that they brought in we got totally surprised that day. They brought in this video crew. They had a green screen in this room, had it set up like a movie theater. And,
Right.
Of course, city manager, I've been apologizing to him every day since then because he got thrown in front of that. So.
Right. So I guess I would ask then, what do you need? It's not an actionable item, but
it's just to be a letter of commitment from my signature that we're interested in pursuing this. That's it. So there's no, but we wanted to at least have this conversation to make sure there wasn't any major concerns from city council, because again, we're not committing to anything long term, anything financially, anything like that. So.
But moving forward, if we were to commit, that would come back before the council.
Oh, yeah.
It'll become a budget item.
But we're talking well down the road before that happens.
Great.
Yeah.
What's the anticipated amount of time? You mentioned staff time.
Yeah.
Probably fairly significant to at least in terms of getting the thing up and operational, and probably over the next 3 to 4 months, since if they want it up and running by the middle of the year.
Yeah, there really would. I think the biggest draw on staff initially would be through my PSAP, through Communications Center, through myself and Chief's Beers Department on how that's going to integrate. But you're also talking about city engineers, the street department, IT, obviously, on the city side when we're trying to build our smart intersection and where we're going to build that out. But we won't have to put in any equipment. We won't have to build any of that out. AT&T will roll everybody in and build that out. They're even talking about the CEO of the company coming here to oversee the initiation of that project.
So will they be laying anything in our right-of-ways, or are they going to be on the poles, or how's that work?
They would, as I understand it, they would be utilizing our already in place infrastructure. So they would be installing things on our street signals and stop signs and things like that if we deployed a smart intersection. I don't think they would be putting up anything independent or digging through our roadways to put in cable or anything like that. It's all cellular. It's all cellular connections. So,
got you.
Yeah.
The other thing they did talk about, because I know our IT people, or maybe it was our dispatch, talked about some gaps out in Reno County, and they're going to be building some of that area out that doesn't have good coverage. AT&T. I mean, that's kind of a side benefit to some of this, but most, the infrastructure wise, I don't
just
see
small cells. Is that what they're doing?
Yeah, I don't know exactly.
Yeah, generally speaking, there would be very little hardware, actual devices. You know, devices that they would put on our traffic control signals are really small. I've seen, we had a couple in Manhattan. They're about this big, for example, that would go on our traffic signals. Most of what we're talking about is software that would be integrated in with our communication center, would be integrated in with the city if we wanted it in the street department or engineering. So it would be software that would have to mesh with our system. So there'd be a lot of IT time involved there, but very little hardware. If we decided to go with the drone concept, if we wanted to test drive that, there would be more hardware involved in that. But again, they do all the work for us.
Well, and ultimately, I guess the federal government has already made the decision for us all if they were the chosen contractor for FirstNet.
They were. You're exactly right. And they will roll out FirstNet across the country, but communities have to opt in. So you can choose not to go on FirstNet. And if we don't go on FirstNet, right now our services for cellular for law enforcement are on Verizon. And we have a priority service if we have a disaster here in the community. The problem is they give you this 47-digit code that you've got to punch in to be able to then prioritize your call for service and kick any other users off the system if we need cellular communication. With FirstNet, the advantage to that is band 14 is strictly law enforcement. And so we would be on that band all the time and have no other commercial and consumer traffic on that. It would also allow us to have secondary users on there. So let's say we had an incident where we had a major fire and we needed street department or we need engineering or whatever, we needed city workers to help us block off streets. We could opt them in during that event and then we could communicate with them directly. One of the other features they have is push to talk on your cell phone. So your cell phone then would act just like a radio. So instead of buying $3,500 radios for all the city crews, we could access those city crew personnel right over their phone in a push-to-talk feature and allow them communication with emergency services to deploy resources.
Are we already using band 14, or is that part and parcel of this FirstNet?
That's part and parcel of the FirstNet. Yeah, and you have to be on AT&T's network to access that band 14, and we're not currently.
Okay. Is there a recommendation or a support for this from staff and from your
certainly
office?
what we would like to do is just to submit a letter of commitment of interest in this beta test site opportunity.
I did want to comment. You mentioned the drone. Am I remembering correctly? Isn't Wichita rolling out a drone and have developed policies? Am I correct?
Yeah, you are correct there. And my former agency also has a drone program, and I have all their policies as well from that drone program. That's one of the things that we tackled there was that privacy issue, and so we put in very specific policies to protect our public privacy there. I have all those policies. I have the entire copy of the drone program that we put in place back there, so I'm not unfamiliar with this concept. The difference is that is a law enforcement specific drone program. This would be a city-specific drone program. For example, you could use the drone if, I don't know, the street department wanted to survey streets and not want to deploy people on the ground, and they wanted to fly that drone up and down streets to, survey that or survey flooding or damage to bridges or things like that. And so it's more of a city applicable process as
Rather
opposed
than law
to
enforcement.
Yes, sir.
Or not just law enforcement.
Yes, sir.
So
Chief,
then Paul could work
can
on
we
draft.
survey speed limits across the city?
Let's not do that. That's
How
not
about
going
that, huh? As a test, as a beta test, up
As a beta test?
on East 30th Street, get that speed limit down to about 20 miles an hour.
Could we?
There's a
we do
particular
that?
tag number we want to give you.
Right, I got you. Yeah. I got people for that. Yeah.
I don't think you have the votes for that, Dave Lyon.
This could be the be a game changer.
So Paul, would you be, let's say I know this is all very preliminary, but I'm just thinking of questions because we're on an aggressive timeline, so
Yeah,
we need to be
very much so.
working on these things in conjunction with the rollout. Would you be working on ordinances or policies that we would look at for the drones or for anything else of privacy concerns? I mean, we'd have to pass an ordinance.
Well, we would, and one of the other hurdles, as I understand it, I don't
know why
know
you
all the
would.
details here. I'm sure AT&T has probably got this figured out, but the city of Hutchinson is also, because of the proximity of our airport, a lot of the city of Hutchinson is a no-fly zone for drones.
Anyway.
Yes.
And so we would have to
Yeah.
figure that portion out.
Yeah,
Right.
I don't know if there'd be an ordinance, a local
would.
ordinance that we would adopt, because it is regulated by FAA,
Yes.
basically.
Yes.
And it's just a matter of how we would utilize it. And like the wildfire would be a great example of how that would have been a very useful
Very
tool. Privacy issue probably wouldn't have been a concern there. But if we're doing code enforcement, instead of peeking in windows, we're flying our drones in the backyards, we might have issues. That's
actually why I bring it up,
Yeah.
because
No,
we
I-
already have concerns in this community
but
about
I don't. that
overstepping
isn't
privacy.
really what this is
No.
about. That kind of stuff.
You're-
that
you're-
was just one example
Yeah.
that we might be able to utilize. So.
And generally speaking, I mean, you're mostly talking about utilizing that for emergency circumstances,
Yeah.
the flooding,
Right.
the wildfires. We look at it if we had a barricaded subject or a house where we had somebody barricaded in. If I've got to deploy a person or people to the rear of that house, are they going to be in danger? Are they, I can fly a drone back there and see if there's a safe location for us to approach, egress points. So just different applications like that would be most generally when we were utilizing that. And in circumstances like that, there's no expectation of privacy.
Right.
So we'd be able to deploy a
yeah,
drone.
yeah.
But if we were to utilize it in things like you're referring to, that would be a policy that would come here, talk about it.
Right.
But I wouldn't anticipate that
Okay.
happening anytime soon. But who knows down the road what it could be used for. So.
I mean, right now, we would have far more control. I mean, people are out there flying them
Oh yeah.
anyway, so with no restrictions, so at least you would have some control.
Well, I think it's exciting. It's certainly
Interesting.
complementary to Hutchinson, Reno
Sure.
County,
Very
and I
much
guess
so.
a state in some way in terms of our being selected, especially if we're the beta site, at least at this point in time. Are you wanting a motion, John, or
Not necessarily.
just
I
a
just
consensus?
wanna make sure
General
that,
feel.
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
not committing any funds or any
Yeah.
other than some resources from mainly, as Chief said, from the public safety side.
Yeah, I consider it a beta test, exactly as described, and so if we find that we don't like certain
Yeah.
items, then we have that opportunity
do
to discontinue it during the test period or even subsequently afterwards, so.
And we went through this, as Chief said, with the beta site for the Next Gen 911
Right.
a few years back, and again, we were the chosen one at that time.
We were the beta test site for that as well in
Really?
the nation. So
Okay.
a lot of this is built off the foundation that we've already laid here in our community. So that's one of the reasons they came to us.
My personal opinion, one of five, I guess, would be I'd be in favor of going forward with the beta test.
Go for it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
see
I
what it
agree.
leads to.
Sure.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
Thanks for the
Thanks.
presentation. Appreciate it. Anybody else that wants to speak on an item that's not on the agenda? Seeing none, next item.
Item 6, consent agenda.
Is there a motion or any questions?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Please call the roll.
Deckent,
Yes.
Dave Line,
Yes.
Soldner,
Yes.
Pyrus de Carvalho,
Yes.
Inskeep.
Yes.
Item 7A, consider application submittal for the Hutchinson Zoo Nature Play expansion.
All right. Fun stuff now.
Fun. Good morning. Ryan Van Zant, Director of the Hutchinson Zoo. Come here today because we have an interesting opportunity came available to us to help us move forward a project that we've had planned for a couple of years now. Just real briefly, I will give a reminder of some of the things that we've shown you before in planning our education building, which is currently under construction. At the same time as our build for the, or at the same time as our planning for the education build, we also had conceptual drawings created to expand past our Otter exhibit going forward. And also just to give a little reminder that in 2018 we redid our mission statement to focus on basically our main clientele, our main visitor, which is children and young families or families with young children. In 2018, in conjunction with the Community Foundation and Heartland Credit Union, we added a small playground specifically for ages 2 to 5. To just add a playground wasn't enough for us. We wanted something that filled a role or a hole that was kind of missing in the city, and that 2 to 5-year-old playground isn't really seen throughout the city because those tend to attract vandalism a little more quickly than others. The zoo's a safe space for that because it has a fence around it, and it's been a very popular attraction at the zoo since it's opened up. Then getting back to our Beyond the Otter exhibit, the top left there there we go. That's the Otter exhibit. It's getting closer to being done. This summer it should be finished. Beyond that, we have the old parking lot of the zoo, and with our staff size and their workloads and some of the needs of the community as far as parks and recreation, we had decided to go with a more of a nature playground type space. So the area that we're talking about right now kind of ends right here. And to the other side of that, this is a splash river. So it's an artificial stream that is filtered for small children to play in. There'll be lots of manipulatives in there, like rocks and sticks and things like that. It'll look very natural, as well as be a play space. We also will have a playground right here, and these are just mounds covered in turf, which sounds simple, but children seem to just be drawn to those and love just running over the top of them. Just like the Pelican Point Play Space playground, we didn't want it to be just another playground in the city. We want it to have multiple purposes. If as designed or as considered, it will be only the second playground in the city that is designed to be inclusive for all children. It'll be the only playground on the south side of town that is designed to be inclusive for all children. So it does serve a role there. It also will be a space that we can expand our education programs, take students out and our summer camps and different things, and teach them about the environment in a place where they can also experience free play and kind of create their own experience out there as well. We got one more fancy slide here. Of course, the 3D renderings. This is the extent of our technology for this. No drones.
Very good.
But this would be looking back toward the Otter exhibit, kind of an artist rendering of that. Kind of added.
Slide, Brian?
I'm sorry?
Could you back up one
Oh,
slide?
sure. There you go.
What, if any, of those structures exist right now?
None of them.
None of them. Okay, that's all.
Oh, no, that's not true. The little pool at the bottom, that is there. Okay. That's the Otter exhibit pool.
Okay.
So that is the exhibit there, that white rectangle right here. That's the housing for the otters. So that playground will also have a view into the exhibit, so the children can kind of pretend they're an otter going down the slide and going to the splash river, another added benefit. So right now it's a dirt parking,
Okay.
the old parking lot, the old dirt parking lot down that direction. An added benefit that just recently came up with the evaluation by Green Play for the updated Parks and Recreation Master Plan. This playground will actually meet 4 of the 10 key areas identified by that group. So so we're ahead of our time in that regard. And it also helps to meet the old master plan from 2006, which suggested to purchase land around the zoo, which did happen. I believe that was in 2007 or 8, and then the other part of that was to expand the zoo and create more of a feel and an atmosphere that encourages people to come and hang around for a while. Not, seeing the animals as part of it, but spending more time there. Maybe you see the otters again swimming and sliding. Well, then you can go right. The children and adults can go right to the playground and they can swim and slide too. Or maybe you see the new ocelot stalking along the glass, stalking at children. Perfectly safe. There's glass. No way they can get close. But those children can go to the playground then, and mom and dad can sit in the shade, and the children can play ocelot and bunny or something like that. So there's lots of crossover there, and it does again fit really nicely with our focus on young children and families.
Wonderful, thanks.
Good morning, Justin Combs, Director of Parks and Facilities.
Morning.
So I'll let Ryan do the fun part of it, the project side. I want to talk a little bit about the grant. The opportunity we have, and really kind of a unique conversation I had with someone from Kansas Wildlife and Parks. So just a brief history on Land and Water Conservation Fund. It's been around since the 50s. It's a federal grant issued through the National Park Service and then administered locally at the state level by Kansas Wildlife and Parks. We do have a very rich history with this grant. Orchard Park, I believe we had $285,000 that was funded through this program. Cary Park, the skate park, Salt City Splash, Rice Park development, and Fairgrounds are all projects that were funded partially through Land and Water Conservation Fund. So we have a very rich history here. So a year ago, when we were in the planning process of this, I talked with the Director of Parks for Kansas Wildlife and Parks, as well as the Program Administrator for Land and Water Conservation Fund at the state level. About this idea, and they were both very excited about the idea. It fit the needs and the goals of Land and Water Conservation Fund very well. Really, the grant is to provide outdoor recreation and education space to the public. And so with the playground and with the location next to the water, it really fit the grant very well. Also with our long history, they knew we were good stewards of the land and the grant money, so they were very excited about the project. So fast forward a little bit then into the 2019 budget process. We did budget for this project in 2019 for $150,000. That was one of the items that was cut. I know last budget cycle was very, very tough. So it was one that was cut. I didn't push real hard on the grant because there was a lot of talk that Land and Water Conservation was going away. So with it being cut and then the talk of the grant not being funded again, project kind of stalled out. Now I want to fast forward to this February at KRPA that we hosted here in Hutchinson. The grant program manager for the state actually sought me out during a session and sat next to me and said, "Justin, do you still have that project we talked about a year ago for Land and Water Conservation Fund?" I said, "Well, yeah, but we didn't get funded." And she said, "Well, I'd really, 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 really encourage you to apply this year." I said, "Oh, really?" The reason was last year they awarded every application that met the minimum qualifications, and they still had several $100,000. I want to say $4,000 to $100,000 left over that they're rolling into this year. And she was already indicating that she hadn't talked to very many communities this year. I think with the doubt that there was about Land and Water Conservation Fund, a lot of communities did what we did and said, it's not worth the effort. It's probably not going to be funded, so why go through that massive process? But she knew we had a project ready to go, that we had the drawings done, and that really is just a matter of filling out the forms. So again, she sought me out for that. So met with Ryan, some of his staff. We talked about it, looked at the grant application. It's a quick deadline. Said, can we even do it? Is there enough time to get it done? Ryan was confident that he could get it done. And kudos to Ryan. If you've looked at the application, it's just the draft at this point. He's done a tremendous job in just a few weeks to get that hammered out. So, and then we met with John before we went too far on it, just to make sure John was supportive of it. John's idea was then to bring it to council for ultimate approval of the grant application. So that's kind of very brief history of how we got to where we are today. So now let's talk numbers a little bit. The total request for the grant would be $300,000. It's a 50-50 share between federal and local. And then Friends of the Zoo then has offered a letter of commitment to fund half of the local share. So it'd be a 75-75 split between the city and Friends of the Zoo. So again, if we're awarded the grant, the city's investment would be $75,000 for a $300,000 project. So earlier I said we didn't fund this project in 2019. So there are a couple options if we're awarded the grant, if we're allowed to submit the application, and if we're awarded, as to how we will fund our $75,000. The two options really are, first is we could budget for it in 2020. We would know in time through the budget process if we were awarded, so we could budget for it in 2020. The second option would be to use cash reserves that we have now. The zoo has a fairly healthy zoo reserve. It's primarily funded through the Friends of the Zoo, and some of their revenue every month that goes into it. We've built that up over the last several years. So there's actually enough in that reserve alone to pay for the $75,000. And then we have some credit card rebate money. When we used to bank with credit union, some of that money was set aside just for the zoo. So I want to say there's like $12,000 or $15,000 in that rebate money that can only be used at the zoo. So we have multiple options to fund our 75 if we're awarded the grant. But today, all we're really asking today is just to submit the application, to authorize the mayor to sign the application. It is due April 15th, so we're really kind of in a time crunch. So that's why we had to bring it today to get that approval. So with that, I will stay for any questions, and Ryan is here as well for any other questions or comments.
Justin, I've got a question, and I may not be comparing apples to apples, but we recently experienced that situation up at Orchard Park in the pavilion. And I guess my question is that based on this projected project cost of $300,000, the way you've outlined, are we reasonably confident and have assurances that the project in phase one would not exceed the $300,000?
Yes. The way I've budgeted is I've budgeted $100,000 for the playground. That's a little bit higher than what we typically spend because of the surfacing. $50,000 for the mounds, and then what do we say, 80 for the splash river, and then the balance would go for the concrete and site work. Those costs are a lot easier to predict than construction costs. Concrete's pretty straightforward.
Okay.
Playgrounds, you know, I've got strong relationships with multiple vendors. I know what a playground's going to cost now and a year from now. So we've really done our homework on this. We're not afraid of that number at all.
Okay, you're comfortable with that number. Okay.
How much contingency?
Good question.
I don't. You did the financials. Did we build a contingency? So the grant application, I don't believe has a line for contingency.
For contingency.
I do know our for the Splash River, our initial conversation with a local pool company, that number was about half. He told us about 40 to 50 to build that just off a sketch, and we budgeted 80. So we almost doubled for the pool. That's the one we're a little concerned with, because we don't have solid data on that one. But like I said, we doubled the initial shoot from the hip price that we got from a local pool company.
Yeah. If I read your material, I think what you're talking about, the $300,000 is for phase one, and phase two would then ultimately include a pavilion or some additions to?
So as Ryan pointed out, phase one, let me go back, this one's maybe a better. Phase one kind of ends right here, so with the Splash River. Phase two would then be this open air pavilion with an attached restroom. We're showing this as a fire pit and then a large pavilion, as well as an access to what we hope it will be our next animal exhibit, kind of where the bison are now. In the short term, if we were awarded this, we would plan on extending this sidewalk here and making some sort of little lookout, just so our zoo visitors can get closer and get a better view of the bison. That's probably one of our biggest complaints we get, is the bison are so far away. So this does get them closer. But phase 2 primarily is the shelter and the patio.
So you've outlined 2 possible options in terms of financing this. One is through the CIP for 2020, through a bonding.
No, no, not at 75,000. No, that
Not a bonding.
No, it would
okay.
be,
Or the other would
it
be using cash reserves.
correct.
What is your recommendation?
Honestly, I would prefer to budget it in 2020. Just
Budget in 2020?
in 2020. Just because I like to have that little bit of cushion as a reserve. But knowing where we're at financially, I'm more than comfortable of using the reserve. So, I think that's a conversation we can have as we progress with the 2020 budget.
Okay.
But I just want to point out that if we submit the grant application, we are saying we do have the funding to do this.
Sure.
And
You're telling us we wouldn't be
and
committing ourselves to $75,000 if we felt we just couldn't.
Yeah. And we do have up until, so it's due to the state in April. The state turns it into National Park Service in June. And we can manipulate the budget in that time period. We can't change a project or anything like that, but if something happens budgetarily, we can revise the budget before it's submitted to the National Park Service. So, it buys
are
us
the
another-
awards announced in June, or is that later?
The awards are announced in the fall. Is it August? In August. I have the exact date in my notes.
Would we commence immediately if we received it?
We'd have to wait on the River Otter Exhibit, which should be complete by August. So yeah, we could start this fall on the playground. Would be the first piece to build. Yep.
When would phase 1 be completed, do you think? Next summer?
Probably next summer. The playground would go in quick. The turf mounds would go in quick. The splash river would be the thing that would be time consuming to do. Because once you pour the concrete, there's a fairly long wait for the concrete to cure and those sorts of things before you can add water. But
Your construction schedule says June 1 of 2020.
of 2020.
Yeah, right.
What do you have to do to maintain that splash river as far as the health issues? I mean, filtering it.
Yep.
Just like you would the splash pads.
It would be exactly like their splash pad. So
Okay.
it would have a filtration and probably UV disinfectant
Okay.
as well as chlorine disinfectant. Just
Okay.
like it'd be just like a splash pad.
Okay.
Which recirculates.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I am in love with the marriage of public and private funds whenever available. And the Friends of the Zoo just moved up another peg in my book. But like I said, we're not committing to which funding mechanism. We're not even sure if we'll be awarded the grant, honestly. But I would suggest that having those options available, thank you for presenting those. That makes it a little easier on me when making my decisions.
Kind of a follow-up to Nancy's question. What do you anticipate being annual maintenance costs then? Once, let's say it's in, and so what's going to be needed to support that?
As
Going
far
forward.
as just an annual cost from a product standpoint, it's really just the filters and the chlorine. So a few $1,000s a year for that. The idea is to not do wood chips on this playground, so there wouldn't be, annually we wouldn't have to refresh that. So not a tremendous amount of product that would have to be purchased annually. As far as labor goes, we'd have to inspect the playground like we do the rest of ours, and then there'd be some additional trash cleanup and lawn care, those sorts of things.
What's the life expectancy for the splash river, and then for the playground equipment?
Playground equipment, the posts are generally guaranteed for 50 years.
How many?
50. Typically a playground, 20 to 30 is about the time that some of the decks and some of those things start wearing out to where it's cost prohibitive to replace the decks and those things. Generally they have, the leading manufacturers have a 10-year warranty on everything. So decks, slides, all of that. So my guess is in the 30-year range when we'd look to replace it.
It was also mentioned.
The river?
Sorry.
The lazy,
the river, I would guess, would be in about that same boat. I mean, it's literally just a concrete trough with a slope to it. So as long as we would have to paint it every few years, like we do the pool. But really,
There's
your
a pump
pumps and-
involved.
Yeah, your pumps and filter.
there's some pumps that would probably have a shorter lifespan, probably 10 years on the pumps or so. I know we've got some pumps at Salt City Splash that are much older than that. So.
And you won't have to contend with the vandalism piece that you might at other parks because of the enclosed nature of the zoo, which was mentioned earlier. So
And it is very strategic for the zoo to add an element like this as opposed to more animals, because we're not looking at adding staff or adding zookeepers. If we were to add this sort of square footage and animal enclosures, we would definitely have to add at least one zookeeper. So this is a way to extend the stay at the zoo from our visitors without adding staff and a tremendous amount of additional maintenance.
Where's the Pelican Playground in relationship to this?
It would be, it's kind of up here by the buffalo, by the bison.
Okay.
If you can, the lookout where you can look out across to see the bison, it's right in there. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I love this project, and Ryan, I was really impressed with your grant application. Very much in favor of this, and think that it's great that we're continue to invest in Cary Park and areas on the south side of town instead of only on the north. So I'm all for this. Thank you for jumping on it, Justin.
Part that I mean, there's several elements. Part that I like is, and Ryan mentioned it in his presentation, that hopefully it becomes a draw for people to come to the zoo.
and hang out, stay in there.
And hang out, not just to come and take in kind of the normal zoo stuff of seeing animals, which is likely to happen anyway, but I think to give a hangout spot, I like that.
Yeah, that Pelican Point it's very small. It's a very small playground, but kids just flock to that.
Kid magnet?
My 11-year-old loves it, and it's built for 2 to 5 year-olds.
You can't even walk around. You get there, it's like congestion because all those kids are on it. It's really great to see, and this will spread some of that traffic out, I think.
Good.
Excellent.
And as long as we keep the prairie dog habitat with the tunnels, that's one of my kids' favorites.
Yeah.
Quite honestly, if I wouldn't bottleneck in there, I would get in there probably
Yeah.
if I could. Okay, very good. Any other questions of staff or motion at this
Well, I'd
point?
move to approve application submittal to the Land and Water Conservation Fund for the Hutchinson Zoo Nature Play expansion and authorize the mayor to sign any necessary documents.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Please call the roll.
Deckent?
Yes.
Daveline?
Yes.
Solnick?
Yes.
Tyros de Carvalho?
Yes.
Inskeep?
Yes. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Next item.
Thank you. Good
Item
luck on
8,
the grant.
report of city officials.
I'm going to look down to you, Jade, if that's all right.
I have nothing today. Thank you.
Okay. Steve?
Simply want to draw people's attention. Next week, starting on Thursday, the 11th, is Beehive, a female soloist and group musical review of the 1960s. Some of you looking around, not too many of you, but certainly out in the community. There are a number of people who lived that time, and there's still a lot of people that look back to that time. So next week, Thursday 11th through Sunday the 14th, Beehive.
I bet there'll be some great music.
And that's at the family community at the Flag.
Good. John?
Nothing this morning.
Nancy?
Nothing.
And I've got nothing at this point either.
Just
Manager?
another excited to announce welcome the Jada to the community and to the city. Appreciate that. Also, just to remind the planning director, we had hired Ryan Vitlock, and he'll start here in Hutchinson on May the 13th.
May 13th.
So,
13th. Good.
So we've checked a few boxes off there. Feel good
Yes,
about
you
that.
have.
So-
Yeah.
And I believe that's all I had.
How long on the executive session do you think?
I hate to tell you guys an hour, but it
11?
might take an hour. Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
Should I do 11:15?
Let's do golly. Let's do 11, and
Okay.
then we should be done by then.
That'll get you out of lunch, I think.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
I move to recess into executive session pursuant to the employer-employee negotiations exception KSA 75-4319B3 in order to discuss issues related to the 2019 contract negotiations with the city's bargaining units. The open meeting to resume in the city council's chamber at 11 o'clock a.m.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Please call the roll.
Deckent?
Yes.
Dave Line?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Pyrus de Carvalho?
Yes.
Inskeep?
Yes. Thank you all for coming.